guys, so today's video is going to be very casual. I'm sitting in my bed, but I wanted to share my thoughts on all of Emily Henry's books because I just finished the last book that I needed to read from her last night, and we are going to share what my favorite one is and what my least favorite one is, and we're going to rank them and we're going to talk about them in depth. So if you haven't read these, I suggest maybe I'm going to be as non-spoilery as possible. I might be a little spoilery, but I'm going to tell you guys why they're my favorites and why, and I'm going to compare like the most similar ones that I feel like are the most similar. So we're going to go ahead and go through the 5 most popular romance books I feel like are by Emily Henry. She's a huge romance author, and like pretty much her books like win best romance on Goodreads pretty much almost every year. I think all 4 of these books have won best romance every year that they've been released. But I'm going to talk about, so we're going to rank them from 5 to 1. So right now I'm going to talk about sorry, I just had some grapes. My least favorite book from Emily Henry, and it's actually her latest release, which is Funny Story. Now, this is the only one I actually don't own physically because it had just come out on hardcover because it didn't come out in paperback yet. But honestly, it might be the only one that I don't own on paperback, because I just didn't really love this one. So this one I gave a 4 stars, and this one was actually my lowest rated book from Emily Henry. I just didn't feel like the connection and the strong connection to like her characters in this book as I have with her other books now. And now since I've read all of them, I really feel like, you know, her characters really stick out, but I actually think that my favorite books from her have really strong characters, but at the same time, like, they just contribute to how good the story actually is. And with this book, let me just tell you a brief synopsis, obviously. So, the main character's name is Daphne, and the other main character's name is Miles, and Miles has just recently broken up with his ex-fiancée Petra, and so has Daphne. She has broken up with her ex-fiancé Peter, but Peter and Petra end up cheating on both of them with each other, and they end up getting together. And they end up getting engaged to each other, and they're supposed to have a wedding. And the funny part about this story, the funny story, is that Miles and Daphne end up being roommates because Daphne ends up finding out that Miles is actually living alone, and she needs somewhere to live because she was living with Peter, and now she's like getting kicked out of her apartment in like 2 weeks, so she needs to find somewhere to live. And somehow she ends up getting to know Miles, and he's like offers to let her come and live with him, I mean. So the whole thing about this book that I thought was going to be a fun, awkward situation, and what I thought this book was building up to, was Miles and Daphne actually accidentally got an invitation to Peter and Petra's wedding, and it was mailed to them by accident. And Daphne and Miles end up getting drunk one night, and they end up RSVPing to their wedding, like just on a drunken whim. Like, you know, if they were sober, they probably would have never done this. But that ends up happening, and basically like the rest of the book is like the events that take place before this is supposed to happen And like Miles and Daphne are just trying to mentally prepare themselves for this actually happening, but it doesn't actually happen. And this was where the disappointment came a little bit for me, but at the same time, it was still a good book. Like, I know when I should have started out with this to begin with, but I know when I read an Emily Henry book, I know it's going to be good. She's like, I think she's a comfort author for so many romance readers, and also for if you just want to get into romance. And I feel like she's so widely popular because her stories really do connect, but like her books aren't like overly sad. It can touch some really sad topics, but I feel like overall like the stories just really resonate with me, and I feel like they also resonate with so many people cuz like you can understand why she's popular after you read her books. Her books are really universally loved. I don't really see that many people hating on her books. She's a pretty well-loved author. So, for good reason, because her books are great and they stick with me. So, but this one, I just didn't really feel the same way as I did reading the 4 other books that I'm going to talk about that I just loved so much more. And with Daphne, she is kind of isolated from her friends, and Miles doesn't really have that many friends either, and they kind of like form a connection together because they form a friendship, but then they also pretend that they're also together just so they can attend the wedding together, but they end up, falling for each other, but they are like kind of fake dating like before this, just so Peter and Petra can see that they're not alone, and just to make them like a little bit jealous, because like literally Peter just got with Miles' ex-fiance, and it's like, what the fuck, like that's so messed up. But overall, like, Emily Henry does use this trope quite a bit in at least 3 of her books. She did this in Funny Story, she did this in Book Lovers, and she did this in Beach Read. Happy Place and People We Meet on Vacation are a little bit less isolated main characters. Like, all 3 of the main characters in those books are like kind of very committed to their relationships. Like, their fiance or their boyfriend is basically like their whole world. Not like they're like obsessed with them, but like I kind of understand this because like some couples can just like forget about their friends and like don't want to hang out with their friends anymore, and then they end up becoming very isolated because they just end up hanging out with their boyfriend or their fiance. And it's like then they realize like later on, like after they break up with these people, that they want to have friends to do something with or go out with. And it's like I feel like she's done that a lot. So I feel like Happy Place and People We Meet on Vacation was a fresh new idea of a different, way of her writing her characters, and I really appreciated that about those 2 books. But in this book, Daphne's dad is like very absentee, and she has a very strong relationship with her mother, and basically her mother was the one that raised her. And again, that's a very similar trope in Book Lovers, but I kind of like that Emily Henry kind of writes some of her female characters and their backstories a little bit similar, because it feels like it's kind of a nod to that story, but it's not a complete, like, Funny Story is completely different from Book Lovers, but it does have a similarity like that because her dad is not non-existent, but he's kind of like, he pops in when he feels like it. And he like just expects her to drop everything. He'll be like, oh, you didn't read the Christmas card that I sent 3 months ago that I was going to say that I was going to visit in the middle of this month, like in March, and she was like, I didn't bother to read it because you never keep your word. So it was a good book. I liked Miles. I liked Daphne. I actually really liked the main character, Daphne. I thought she was a good, strong female character. Just the story kind of fell flat for me after that didn't really happen. And then, like, the inevitable third act breakup happened, but I felt like it was so predictable because there was not enough tension between the characters, or I didn't really care about them as much, that's why that this is my least favorite Emily Henry book. But it's still a great book. I would still recommend somebody to read Emily Henry because I think her books are great. So sadly, this is the lowest rated one. It's a 4 stars. Let's move on to number 4, which is Book Lovers. Now, this was actually the first Emily Henry book that I read because I felt like the other 3 books all took place like in really hot weather, and I felt like if I read these like in April or March, I feel like it's just gonna be too early to read them because like the setting is like too hot. But basically, I really liked this book a lot. I all these other books I feel very strongly about. I actually almost put this one at number 3 and a different one at number 4, but I feel like this is at number 4 for a reason. But these are some of my 2 favorite main characters that she's written. I actually really love the main characters in this book. I think I actually love them the most out of all of the Emily Henry books that I have read. It's just the story that doesn't quite hit 5-star for me. But it's still such an enjoyable book. I rated this one a 4.25 because I definitely liked this more than Funny Story. So the 2 main characters' names are Nora and Charlie. And Charlie is actually my favorite male character that Emily Henry has ever written. And now, since I've read all of her books, he's still my favorite because, I don't know, he's just so funny. The way that he would do things for Nora, I loved their relationship so much. But I feel like with this one, it took too long for them to be together. And she kind of does that in People We Meet on Vacation too, and Happy Place. But I feel like with both of those books, there's a lot more reasons as to why they shouldn't be together or why they prolong it more. With this one, it's just a little bit annoying because like you kind of realize that they should be together. So Nora is a book agent and Charlie is a book editor. And they have to meet with each other to talk about, publishing certain books. And she was raised solely by her mother, and she has a younger sister. And basically her younger sister is her best friend. And she was just out of a relationship that she's been in for like a few years, and then she realized that they weren't in love. And then the same thing with Charlie. But her sister actually offers for her to go on a trip to like South Carolina with her. It's either North or South Carolina. And they take the trip, even though she doesn't want to leave because she's from New York City. She loves New York City. She doesn't really travel that much anywhere. And what's so funny is that in People We Meet on Vacation, it's like the complete opposite. They like travel all the time because hello, they're going on vacations all the time. But Charlie ends up going to South Carolina and just so happens to bump into Nora. And it just so happens that Charlie is from South Carolina and he's living here for the summertime because he has to take care of his parents that his dad just had a stroke, so he had to move in and take care of them for the next couple of months in the summertime. So I felt like that was already too predictable. I'm sorry, I have to lean back. I don't really care how casual this video is. We're just talking about books, so I really didn't feel like I had to sit on my desk for this. I'm just gonna chill, and if you don't like that, I really don't care. So anyway, so they end up bumping into each other in this town that she's visiting, and she's actually staying there for 3 weeks with her sister because she says you never get away, you need to get away, and blah blah blah. And basically it's about, both of them keep on getting pushed together, but the way they run into each other in the town is so funny. Because she's like trying to hide in like a bookshop, and then he like pops in, and then he's like, Nora, is that you? And she's like, yes. And then they end up like obviously finding out that both of them are there. And basically like all the events of them like, hanging out and having meetings with each other about the books that they want to publish eventually grows into a romance, but like they don't kiss until like almost over 200 pages in. And for me, sometimes, like, I love slow burns. I really do. But not when it's delayed on purpose, that it's like, can they please kiss already? Like, that's when it gets a little bit annoying, unless there's like a valid reason as to why they are delaying something that they both should stop preventing each other's happiness. It annoys me a little bit. But anyway, she has an absentee father. Her father has never been in her life, and they were raised by her mother, and she basically, her only friend is her sister, because she has felt like she's had to take on the responsibility of taking care of her sister because her mother died like a year before that, and she has just felt this pressure of taking care of her sister all the time. And Charlie, we don't really we get his backstory about his parents, and he has to stay in South Carolina. And the real problem between them is that she either is going to stay in New York because he wants to stay in South Carolina and take care of his parents. So that's basically the conflict as to why they might not be together. So it was still really good. It was still really, really funny. But after reading Beach Read and understanding all of the comparisons between these two books, Beach Read is just better. But this was still really funny. I just found like the fact that they like were staying in the same state and they had just met, and they're like, oh, what a coincidence. I just felt like it was too coincidental to be believable. But, we are in a fiction book, so suspense of disbelief is a little bit more flexible when you're reading a fiction. So, but I still really enjoyed it. It was so funny. And I don't really have any other complaint. That's basically what the story is about. So let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is going to be Happy Place. Now, I actually thought after I had read this one, I pretty much predicted like where the books were going to fall at this point. Like when I had read Book Lovers and then I read Beach Read and Funny Story, I already knew that Book Lovers was a little bit lower than Beach Read and a little bit higher than Funny Story. So, but with this book, I ranked this higher than Book Lovers, even though I loved the characters in Book Lovers more. I really loved the story of this one because this was like the first Emily Henry book where the characters were not completely isolated from their friends. This is their friend group on the front cover, and the two main characters are Harriet and Win, and basically they go to their happy place once a year because they have been friends since like college. They were college roommates, her and her two other girlfriends, and they just so happened to make friends with her best friend's her best friend is getting married, and he becomes part of the friend group, the fiance, throughout the years. And, he becomes just as close with them as the three girlfriends are. And then Win ends up becoming friends with them in college as well. And he's like, the other guy's like best friend at first, and then Harriet ends up meeting him, and then they become really close, and then they obviously start dating. But they go to like this house in, I forget where it is, but they go to this summer beach house like once a year, and they stay for like a week or two, and they, stay together so they can come back together because they've all like moved away from each other. So they all come back to their happy place. And the reason why I really love that this is called Happy Place is that it's not just the physical place or like where your mind goes for your happy place, like to like calm down when like things are bad or sad. It's also like instilling that happy place in your mind permanently, like in the moment with your friends. And that's what I really liked that she related it to. It was just really, this one was so well written. But the only reason why I ranked this one a little lower is that it was really sad, but also like they kind of had a reason to not be together for so long, but also at the same time you kind of wanted them to get back together. Like you were rooting for them the whole time. But basically Harriet and Win were engaged, but they were always long distance. So like they had a feeling that it wasn't going to work out. And with her family, there's actually a lot that happens in this book. Actually, I forget what her parents were. Her parents were always like kind of, the embarrassing kind of parents, like kind of similar to people we meet on vacation. They were kind of like embarrassing the main character a lot around Win and like trying to get her to date Win all the time. And that's like the same thing that happened in People We Meet on Vacation, which is actually really funny because this one relates a lot to People We Meet on Vacation. Also, the writing style of this is very similar to People We Meet on Vacation too. Not as similar to Book Lovers, even though a lot of people compare this one to Book Lovers. I think it's very similar to People We Meet on Vacation, but People We Meet on Vacation is a lot happier. So anyway, Harriet and Win break up, but they haven't told their friends yet. And basically throughout the whole book, you wonder when their friends are going to know. But it's so good the way that this ends. So I ended up rating this a 4.5 out of 5. It wasn't quite a 5-star, but honestly, like, this one might be, I think I'm going to make it a 4.75. It was so close to being a 5-star. I just thought it was very sad. I kind of felt the same way about Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, but I felt like the romance happened quicker and less delayed, and I understand the reasons why they shouldn't be together because they're long distance, they don't know if it's going to work out, and that's kind of similar to Book Lovers and People We Meet on Vacation as well. But the similarities between the writing styles between this and People We Meet on Vacation is that it'll go from the present to the past, like every other chapter. Like this will say Monday for one chapter, meaning that day that's going on presently, and then the next chapter will say like 5 years ago. So it'll talk about like their college days and how they ended up dating and all of that. And it was just really good. And then they actually end up fake dating each other, and I appreciated the fake dating trope in this book so much more than Funny's story, because it made sense why they were fake dating, because they didn't want to tell their friends that they broke up yet. So they're fake dating like this entire time. And there also is forced proximity where they're forced to share a room together because they were like, oh, we would just assume that you guys would want to stay together because you haven't seen each other in so long. since you guys are long distance and you don't get to spend that much time together. So it was just really good. It was a really good story. And again, like, you know, since the two main characters weren't isolated, they still had a group of friends even though they were in a long distance relationship. I felt that was even more important in this story, even though they don't live too close to some of their friends. They're still all like trying to maintain friendships with each other. And I felt like this book was a lot more about the happy place of being with friends, and actually the love of friendship was almost more of a theme than the romance in this. But also the romance was really good too. This was just such a good book. I highly recommend reading this one too. It's just, it was such a good book. Chef's Kiss. And then, if I give away anything else, I'm going to spoil it, so I can't speak too long about these books. And then number 2 was the one that I just finished yesterday, so I can make this video. And number 2 was definitely People We Meet on Vacation. I know I kind of mentioned it a couple of times already, but this book was just, I don't think I've felt a happier, warmer, fuzzy feeling reading an Emily Henry book than this one. This one was just so well balanced and I felt like with this one I was smiling like the entire time reading this. I thought it was just such a happy, warm, fuzzy book. It was just so cute. It was so funny. The banter between the two characters are great. I think that she's a master at writing banter. It's hysterical, it's funny, it's fast-paced, it's clever. But I feel like with People We Meet on Vacation and Happy Place, I feel like the banter between the two characters in both of these books is a lot more natural. Like, it feels like more conversational, not like a joke like every other line of dialogue. I feel like in Book Lovers and Beach Read, that the two main characters are funny like all the time, and it is very clever and it makes it very entertaining and just so funny. But it just like sometimes, I mean, of course I love comedy in any book. I will eat it up. As long as a book makes me laugh, I will have a good time. But like with this, it was just a little bit more natural and casual. So basically, this book is about, the two main characters are Poppy and Alex. And Poppy is a magazine writer, and Alex is a English literature teacher. But they've known each other since they were in, I believe, was it high school? They both grew up in the same town. And they weren't friends until I think like college. So it's like kind of similar to Happy Place, or Happy Place is kind of similar to this because this was actually written before Happy Place. So I would say Happy Place is similar to the writing style of this book. But as I was reading this book, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a 5-star for me, but I rated this 5 stars cuz like honestly, the way that this was written was it was just so uplifting and so happy. And I've been reading like so many romance books that are like sad, but they're still amazing books. Like all of Abby Jimenez's books have been amazing. They're just very sad. But with this, so like, you know, she moves to New York to be a magazine editor, and he stays in their home state because he has to take care of like his family because his mom died when he was very young, and basically like his father had to take care of them. But it was mostly Alex because Alex was the oldest brother, because like the dad like didn't really, you know, couldn't really function without the mother because he was so upset about losing her. And she actually was bullied all throughout middle school and high school in their home state. So she wanted to get out of the state, out of the town as soon as possible. So she was able to move to New York, and she made like a best friend that is actually like an influencer friend, and she kind of does it on the side as well. But like she's not sure if she's exactly happy working for her magazine, but basically like her job is that she gets to travel talking about vacation spots and writing about them for the magazine that she works for. And it's called R&R, and she's allowed to bring like, you know, somebody with her sometimes. So she'll ask Alex to go. So they like travel together, and they do this like once a year because like all throughout college and like their younger years they were like saving up money to go on trips with each other before she started working for like a big time magazine. So like that's why this book was just so cute and adorable, but like they become best friends, and then you clearly, you know, understand why they love each other, and they finally end up, you know, being together, obviously. But like the way that this one was done was just, again, it wasn't too much of like a sob story, like not as sad as like Book Lovers and Happy Place, that I felt like such a warm, fuzzy feeling about this book that it was just so good. I would say if you want to read a good summer romance that just doesn't make you cry until like the last 5 pages, but like overall, it was just such a fun time. I found myself smiling through this entire book. I thought it was so funny, but it was just, the writing was just so fun. So I just loved this. This was so good, but I'm not going to give away anything else. But basically, like, it switches between each chapter of this summer and then 5 summers ago. So that's why it's similar to Happy Place. But it was just so cute. And it just touched on so many things so well. And I loved it. I really loved it. I didn't think halfway through that it was going to be that memorable for me. I was feeling like it was like a 4.5. But then like the last like 60 pages like really took it to 5-star for me. It was just so good. And then, of course, I mean, obviously, number one has to be Beach Read. Like, I know people never shut up about this book, but this book is her best because it's so good. This book is one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's like top 10 for me. Like, this book is perfect romance writing. And that's why I kind of wanted to read all of her books, you know, a lot faster than all the other romance authors that I've read so far. Like, I'm still working on Abby Jimenez's books. I've read 3 of them. I still have 3 more. But I wanted to read every book that she came out with because I wanted to see if they were going to be better than Beach Read. Even though I read Book Lovers before I read Beach Read, just because I wanted to read at least one Emily Henry book before this. But truly, this is fantastic writing. It's just the flow of this book is kind of unmatched to like any other romance book that I've read. I mean, I love Abby Jimenez's books. I love Ashley Poston's Dead Romantics. But the way that she wrote this book, the flow of this book is amazing. Like, there's not one lull in this, and just when you're reading it, you're just kind of in awe on how good the writing is. Like, oh, I loved it. So, obviously, this is clearly a 5-star, probably a 6-star read, to be honest, because this book lives right here. This book is so gut-wrenching, but the way that this is written is so fantastic that it's like, when I think about it, though, my heart hurts a little bit. But that's how much this book resonated with me. I was bawling my eyes out, but you literally felt like you were the main character reading these letters that I'm going to mention soon. So basically, The two main characters are Augustus and January. And January has to move to like this beach house that her dad owned, that she has to move to for the summer because her dad just recently passed away. And she has to go there to like take care of selling the furniture, cleaning out the house, selling the house, all of that. So she's not really doing much. I forget what her job is in this. Um she's a writer. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So she is actually writing, she's a romance novel writer, and he is actually kind of more a sci-fi, like thrillery, bizarre, like kind of fiction writer. And basically when she moves to the beach house, he lives across the street. And like one night she's trying to go to sleep, but since it's the summertime, all of the people in the town are gonna be partying because they're off from work, they're off for the summer, they want to party and drink. And it's like 1 in the morning, and she's trying to go to sleep, and she's like, I'm so annoyed, I'm gonna go tell him to go turn it down. But she can't really see like who he is. But the way that the two main characters bump into each other in this book is just so much more natural than Book Lovers. And Book Lovers is similar to this, but it's not this perfection, because like the way they have their meet cute is like so hilarious. So when she goes over to tell him to turn the music down, she can't see his face really, because like it's super dark out. So she tells him to turn the music down, he does, and then like the next day happens, and like she goes into town, and like this woman that owns like this bookshop asks her if she can go to like a book club meeting. She's like, oh, it's always great when other authors are go and um come to our book clubs. It's so amazing when authors stay here for the summer. We becoming such a famous town, like blah blah blah. So she invites him, but I mean she invites her, but all of a sudden, like the day that it happens, when they go to the book club, he shows up. And she thinks that he's here to talk about his most recent book, but she also thinks that that's why she's there, because she's also writing a book, but she's having severe writer's block. And she's like, oh no, I hope I don't have to talk about my book. But then she like, gets upset, and you think that this is so shitty because you're thinking the same thing, like, oh no, that bitch, like she invited him just to talk about his book. But then when the woman that runs the book club starts talking about what they're going to talk about, they talk about the book that they just read that's by neither of them. And it was just so funny, and they're like, why are we here? I was laughing so hard. So basically, there's just so much that happens in this book. So after they meet each other, they like hang out because they're living across the street from each other. And then they also find out that they know each other because they were actually high school rivals. But the forced proximity is so much more natural again, because it's not like coincidental, because it's not like they had just met. They knew each other from high school. And she thinks that he doesn't remember her when they meet. She's trying to act like she doesn't know him. And then he finally says, I remember you, January. It's just so funny. But they would like constantly compete with each other in high school or college, because she always thought that he didn't like her, but he actually really, really liked her, and he actually wanted to be with her. Oh my god, there's so many things that happen in this book. Like, that's why it makes it so good. And the fact that it's only 360 pages and it can resonate with you this much, I can understand why people reread these books. This book especially. Like, I am dying to reread this again. But anyway, her father actually ends up having, you find this out really quick. It's not really spoilery. Her father is actually unfaithful to her mother, but her mother was diagnosed with cancer twice, and the father, like, starts an affair. I'll take that for what you will. You kind of need to develop your own opinion about it. Obviously, it's wrong. But there's like this safe in the house, and she finally is able to get into it. And in the safe is her dad's letters to January. And when you read these letters from the dad, my heart just broke in two. Like, reading these letters, I needed a good 10 minutes before I could go back to reading it again, because it literally shatters your soul. Like, you literally feel like you're the main character reading these letters. Like, that's how much this book resonated with me. But also, like, the two main characters' banter is hysterical. Oh my god, it's so funny. And it's like just as quick-witted and fast-paced and hysterical writing as Book Lovers is, but this just writes it and does it so much better. But Book Lovers is still a great book, but I would say this is still her best book, and it's extremely popular for a reason. I mean, sometimes TikTok doesn't really get it right, but TikTok books are popular for a reason. I feel like, people look down on TikTok readers, that it's like, oh, you're not really reading real books. Fuck that shit. Read what you want to read. And if you want to read a popular TikTok book, or if you want to read a book that nobody's heard of, you're reading, and you're reading what you want to read. Just as long as it's what you want to read. But even if you have a fear of missing out, or you want to read what's popular, go ahead and do it. Like, I don't care why you're reading a book. Again, as long as you're reading it and you're enjoying it, that's all that matters. So, yeah, absolute perfection. Chef's kiss. Again, the way that this book flowed is why this book is perfection. I haven't really felt like any of her other books have flowed as perfectly as this one did, but that's why, like I said, this pretty much set the bar for me after I read this one. And I was like, you think it's gonna be a light, beach kind of read. No, it's not. They don't even end up really on the beach together until one scene in the book, and they're sad. Like, she's sad and he's like hugging her. But that's it. There's one scene. It's because it takes place not even in a beach house. It's a lake house. But yeah, perfection. Absolutely loved this book. So yeah, that is my ranking of all of my Emily Henry books. Let me just put them back in order really quick. So I just love seeing this displayed, and just a quick recap. Funny Story was number 5, Book Lovers was number 4, Happy Place was number 3, People We Meet on Vacation was number 2, and of course Beach Read was number 1. But I would say I would give Emily Henry a shot if you have been interested in her books. I think they are fantastic. And again, now I actually really understand why she's so popular, because her books are really, really great. She's an amazing writer. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. Let me just read a brief background on Emily Henry. I'm just going to read it on Goodreads. Actually, maybe we'll just read her about the author. Actually, this book is only 358 pages, So I think this is actually her shortest book, and somehow it's her best. I actually think Happy Place is her longest. I think it's like 380 pages. Oh, it's the same synopsis as the same author bio in Beach Read as it is on Goodreads. It just says she's the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Book Lovers, People We Meet on Vacation, and Beach Read, as well as the forthcoming Happy Place. Isn't that crazy? She lives and writes in Cincinnati and the part of Kentucky just beneath it. Find her on Instagram at Emily Henry Writes. But that's about it. I don't know why there isn't any more about her. And I'm surprised I'm not even following her. So yeah, that's it. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819. Check out my Poshmark at the same handle. Let me know what your favorite Emily Henry book is. Let me know if you've read all of them, if you're currently reading them, if you're interested in reading them, or if you don't care. I really would love to know. So yeah, I'm so happy I was finally able to make this video. I am working on like reading as many romances as I can. I have a lot of books to read, but I'm glad that I actually only read these books in like a 2-month period. So, because again, there was a lot more books I wanted to read, but I read Book Lovers and Beach Read in April, and then I read Funny Story and Happy Place in May, and then I just started off this month with People We Meet on Vacation. So that's why I read her books a little bit faster, because I was reading 2 of her books a month. So yeah, that's it. Bye.